I want to just turn back to what's going to happen. Two interesting things in terms of the succession of Tillerson. Pompeo is in. Pompeo was reportedly slow-walking the CIA's investigation into Donald Trump. I'm sure that that made Trump feel good about Pompeo. There was reports that Tom Cotton, back in the day when we were talking about Tillerson being fired months ago, that Tom Cotton would become CIA chief. It is conceivable that folks in the Republican Party said, you know what? After Alabama, we shouldn't be taking a sitting senator and putting them in a position in the administration, because that opens us up to a certain electoral liability. So the good news is that Tom Cotton will not be the CIA chief. And here, this is great news. The ceiling has been shattered, folks, the glass ceiling. We have our first female CIA chief. And boy, oh boy, is she more than qualified, because this woman, Gina Haspel, she oversaw the torture of multiple terrorism suspects, and then was instrumental in the destruction of videotapes documenting their torture in a secret prison in Thailand. In fact, she was the head of of this black site in Thailand. This is where clandestine American intelligence officers regularly tortured people suspected of being affiliated with al-Qaeda. This is all from the Senate Select Committee on Intelligence report on what happened at the prison and who was involved. This, of course, was part of the Bush administration's efforts to combat humanity in the wake of 9/11. She was one of the program's most prominent leaders. She oversaw the systemic torture against al-Qaeda members, including Abdul al-Rahman al-Shasari and Abu Zubaydah, who, I guess it was al-Sisi who supposedly told us that Saddam Hussein had weapons of mass destruction.
How many waterboards was he
80,
in?
I believe it was 86, but that's just off the top of my head. Now, there was a guy, Jose Rodriguez, who was the head of the CIA clandestine service. He supposedly authorized the destruction of 90 videotapes in 2005. They were being requested by the Senate Intelligence Committee. He destroyed them. And at the time, he was the fall guy for this. But 7 years later, in a memoir defending the use of torture, he wrote that Haspel had drafted the cable ordering the tape's destruction. She was Rodriguez's chief of staff at the time. So it's unclear whether or not the order came from him or from her, but she was certainly deeply involved in it. Haspel, the CIA wanted to have her run the clandestine operations. Di-Fi, who was then the senior Democrat on the Senate Intelligence Committee, blocked the promotion. And there's been over the years some Democrats who have had a problem with her. But here's what the problem was. Zubaydah was waterboarded 83 times in a single month. He reportedly had his head slammed into walls. And, you know, frankly, we don't have the videotapes, so we don't really know how much worse it got than that. I imagine it got much worse.
I think Jose Rodriguez acknowledged at least like smacking and waterboarding in his 60 Minutes interview at the very least.
Yes. And if you admit that.
Right. There's your 30% you're admitting to.
Exactly. And the bottom line is that the number of people who are coming back into this administration who should have been in jail had Barack Obama not had the opinion that we should hold none of these people accountable for anything, that we should simply turn the page, that we shouldn't even read the page. And I feel like I'm a broken record on this because I've probably said this 24 times over the past 7, 8 years. This is what you get. And this was no surprise. We saw this with Watergate to some extent. We saw it with Iran-Contra to a greater extent. Each time you hold these people less and less accountable, the bar gets lowered and lowered and lowered in terms of what it takes to hold people accountable. So you can talk about the destruction of norms under the Trump administration, but understand that these were midwived by the turning the other way by the Obama administration, whether it was in terms of the banks. We talked about why Steve Mnuchin, instead of sitting in a white-collar prison or having just got out on probation doing community service, is now the Secretary of the Treasury. Here's another example. And understand that every time you have one person like this that we can see that should have been held accountable, there are dozens, if not more people who are subsidiary to that person, who are also getting away with stuff, who are also sending a message throughout the institutions that they populate that you will not get punished for doing these type of things. And in some instances, you will continue to float to the top.
And become head of the CIA.
I
think just a button, people should look him up more. Jose Rodriguez, it's just because you mentioned this. He was also questioned in the 80s as part of Iran-Contra because he was in the Latin America division. And in 1997, he was condemned by an inspector general at the CIA for intervening with the Dominican Republic's government on behalf of a friend in a major drug trafficking case. I mean, so that's just how it works. And
yep.
Of course, as you say, like Jose Rodriguez represents dozens of other people.
I don't know. I think you guys are being kind of sexist. Would you be criticizing her torture record if she were a man?
I would like to come out and promote our new CIA director. This is Hillary Clinton. I saw Black Panther. There's a super predator I can get behind.
I mean, honestly, it's just people should contemplate this. She oversaw the heart of the torture program. And now she's head of the CIA 10 years later. Like, it's not that, that time where she broke...
the glass ceiling.
She broke the glass ceiling, but also the glass ceiling apparently around the Nuremberg laws and the...
The glass ceiling was a window pane over a suspect's face in Thailand.
But not only did this not slow her trajectory, she is basically at the pinnacle of her career. Not to mention, now we have the head of the CIA whose perspective on torture is not only good to do, good for the career too.
Oh yeah, definitely.
How is she going to...
And a Secretary of State is a promoter of torture as well, and Mike Pompeo.
How is she going to say no torture? Why would she?
I don't think that there's even... I mean, and also, again, just from Jose Rodriguez he came out to, sort of reposition himself from a career perspective. He defended the program in every step of the way. He was happy with that. There's no reason to indicate that that Gina Haspel would be she hasn't recanted anything.
No,
I mean,
of course not.
Even Brennan, the torture complicit people that Obama brought in, they had to leak that they were like, oh no, we were super not into
bad about
this.
It. Right, Brennan had to do.
Well, this was happening.
Right.
I was totally not into that. These ones were like, no, that was cool.
It's nuts, folks. It's really nuts. But this stuff is important. Next time, we'll see if we can get it right. Got to turn the page over and over again, he said. Now George Bush and his chief speechwriter, the Axis of Evil, now they're heroes.
Right.
Now David Frum is a hero.
David Frum. Look at what David Frum still writes about Muslims. He's just a friggin' like. I understand that there are like tasteful Likudniks. That should not be like the test of how far policy goes.